Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a huge topic, something absolutely vital. We're breaking down the entire system of Indian agriculture, from the soil all the way up to society. All right, to really get our heads around this, let's start with a thought experiment. A pretty scary one, actually. What would happen if, just for one season, all of Indian agriculture just stopped? Well, the impact would be devastating, and I mean immediate. It's not just about not having food on the table, though. That's obviously huge. Think about it. The clothing industry, no cotton, no jute. Millions upon millions of jobs, gone, overnight. National exports, they just stop. You're looking at the entire economy getting rocked to its very core. And that is why getting a handle on this system is so important. It's literally the foundation of, well, pretty much everything. So yeah, the stakes are incredibly high. Let's dive right into part one and really appreciate the scale we're talking about here. Just how much of a lifeline agriculture is for India. Get this, over half, more than 50% of India's population depends on agriculture for their livelihood. So you see, it's not just another sector of the economy. For a massive chunk of the country, it is the economy. It's what puts food on the table, and it's what feeds countless other industries with the raw materials they need to even exist. Okay, so we've seen the big picture. Now, let's zoom right down to the ground level. How is all this farming actually done? Turns out there are basically four main ways. First up, we have the oldest method of all, what's called primitive subsistence farming. Just like the name says, it's pretty basic. We're talking small patches of land, simple tools, like hoes and digging sticks. The goal here isn't to make a profit. It's literally about survival, feeding your family. This is what's often called slash and burn farming. A family will clear a patch of land, burn the vegetation to get some nutrients into the soil from the ash, farm it for a bit, and then they move on, letting that patch of forest grow back naturally. Now, what happens when you have the complete opposite situation? This little phrase here really nails it. More people, less land. More pressure, more intensive farming. And that brings us to our second type, intensive subsistence farming. This is what you see in really crowded, high-population areas. Farmers have these tiny plots of land, and they have to use every single trick in the book, tons of labor, irrigation, you name it, to squeeze out the absolute maximum amount of food possible. In this table lays it all out perfectly. You can see the whole spectrum right here. You start with primitive farming, small land, family labor, just for survival. Then you get intensive. Still small land, but way more labor. But then, look over on the right. When you get to commercial and plantation farming, everything changes. We're talking huge tracts of land, hired labor, tons of technology, and the purpose? It's all about selling to the market and feeding into big industries. All right, so that's how they farm. Now let's talk about when they farm. Because everything, and I mean everything, is built on the natural rhythm of the land, the seasons. You see, India's entire agricultural year is broken down into three main cropping seasons. You've got Kharif, Rabi, and then a short little season in between called Zaid. Each one has its own specific timing and its own set of crops that grow best. And this natural cycle is basically the boss. It dictates everything. So for example, the Kharif crops, like rice, get sown right when the summer monsoons kick in. Then you've got the Rabi crops, like wheat. Those are sown in the winter and harvested in the spring. And they depend on those gentler winter rains or, of course, irrigation. So we know the how and the when, but what about the what? What does this whole massive system actually produce? Let's take a look at the bounty of a nation's harvest. Just look at that number, number 2. It might seem simple, but it's incredibly powerful. India is the world's second largest producer of rice. And rice isn't just a crop, it's the staple food for a huge majority of the population. So why so much rice? Well, it's because huge parts of the country have the perfect, and I mean perfect, conditions for it. Rice absolutely loves the heat. We're talking temperatures over 25 degrees Celsius. And boy, is it a thirsty crop. It needs tons of humidity and more than 100 centimeters of rain a year. And for the places that don't get quite that much rain, that's where massive irrigation systems come in to save the day. But hey, it's not all about rice. The harvest is incredibly diverse. This chart here breaks it down nicely. You've got your essential food grains, rice, wheat, millets. Then you've got your big cash crops, things like sugarcane and tea. And of course, you have the fiber crops, like cotton and jute. Those are the raw materials that literally fuel entire industries.
So if you think of rice as the king of the monsoon season, then wheat is definitely the king of the winter. It's the #2 most important cereal crop, and it's the main food for people in the northern and northwestern parts of the country. It's kind of perfect, right? It complements rice by growing in a totally different season and in different places. And we absolutely cannot forget about millets. This quote says it all: climate resilient and nutrition rich. And it's so true. These things are basically super grains. They're not just packed with good stuff like iron and calcium, they are also incredibly tough. Think about it. In a world with a changing climate, their ability to grow in really harsh, dry conditions, places where other crops would just give up, well, that makes them critically important for the future of food.
Okay, let's pull back from the individual crops now. Let's zoom out again and look at the whole system, how it's managed, and maybe more importantly, what kind of challenges it's up against today. So, over the years, India has tried a lot of things to modernize its agriculture. But the real game changer, that was the Green Revolution back in the 60s and 70s. And it wasn't just one magic bullet, it was a whole package deal, a combination of new high yielding seeds, chemical fertilizers, and a lot more irrigation. And look, it was a huge success in one way. It dramatically boosted food production and helped prevent famines. But, and this is a big but, that success came with some serious long-term costs that we're really only starting to understand now. And that's really the key takeaway here. The whole game has changed. Back then, the #1 problem was simple: not enough food, low production. But today, the challenge is so much more complex. It's about sustainability. It's about the welfare of the farmers themselves. The goal isn't just to produce more food anymore. It's about producing it in a way that doesn't destroy the environment and making sure the people growing it can actually make a decent living. And believe me, the challenges farmers face today are incredibly complex. They're kind of stuck at a crossroads. On one hand, you've got all these internal pressures, like their land being broken up into tiny, inefficient plots. The cost of everything, seeds, fertilizer, is just going up and up. And then there's the really scary one: groundwater levels are dropping, which is a direct result of that push for higher and higher yields. Then, on the other hand, you've got external pressures, the environmental damage from all those chemicals, plus fierce competition from cheaper imports. It is a really, really tough balancing act. And that brings us to our final thought, which this quote just captures perfectly. If we understand agriculture deeply, we understand India deeply. And that's because in India, agriculture is just so much more than a job or an industry. It's a mirror, reflecting the nation's climate, its culture, its economy, its entire future. So the big question we're left with is this: how is this ancient system, which is truly the heart of the nation, going to adapt and survive the incredible challenges that are coming its way?